Spot the difference. Well, you don't really have to, because one is a Toniebox and one is a Toniebox 2. And I don't even know where to start. Like, if you didn't know, my special interest is kids tech. Like, my research is in how we can use kids tech to help literally babies learn from technology effectively and the best way, rather than just blindly throwing babies in front of tech and hoping for the best. Anyways, it should be zero surprise that I was going to do a review of this. Now, a little bit of transparency. So in, I think, Christmas of 2023, I actually bought a Toniebox for my daughter from the UK because they hadn't launched yet in Australia. And then when they launched in Australia last year in 2024, I was sent a Toniebox and contracted to do a couple of ads with them. So I have worked with Toniebox. However, I actually had a Yoto beforehand. So I was sent a Yoto Mini in 2021 or 2. And then I was sent a big Yoto last year at some point. I've been sent all of them, but I've also personally bought a Toniebox before we even got a Toniebox, and I deep dived and hyper focused on it to try and get it. I need you guys to know that I do have an ongoing relationship with Tonies, to the degree where I was invited to the launch of the Toniebox 2. I just didn't go because it was in Sydney and I live on the Gold Coast and I have little kids, so that was just a lot of work. Anyways, what I did do is ask if they could send me a Toniebox 2, and they didn't just send me a Toniebox 2, they sent me a gigantic, oh, I just hit myself in the face, PR box, okay? So there was so much stuff in here that the moment it arrived, my kids kind of tore it to pieces and took everything out of it. So I haven't actually put it all back together. But throughout this video series, because there's so much to kind of dive into in this, I will slowly unpack the new parts, but also talk about the old parts and all that good stuff in a nitty-gritty kind of review, because I think that's why you guys are here, right? You want to hear the science behind it, the robustness, the efficacy, all of the fancy things, because this is not a cheap thing for a child. This is quite an expensive device. Not as expensive as an iPad or something, but it's expensive. This is not a sponsored review. I was gifted the new Toniebox and I have worked with Tony before, but this itself is organic content based on my particular interests and a review based on my experience doing research with babies and specifically designing technology like robots for the last decade for babies. I don't even remember what they marketed the Toniebox, let's call it Toniebox 1 as, but I do know that they didn't have the age range down to 1 year old. And there's possibly a few reasons for that. The first and foremost is probably that the Tonies themselves are hand-painted little characters. So one, probably not best to let a baby suck on that, but also two, if a baby pegged this at your head, it would hurt, right? So that could be one reason why they weren't marketed for little baby. It is squishy and soft, and we have thrown it and dropped it a lot. So it is durable in that respect. However, it just wasn't designed for 1 year olds specifically, and it has probably less to do with the box and more to do with the Tonies. New Toniebox, Toniebox 2, comes with a new age range. So from 1 year plus. So I assume that means from 12 months plus. Part of it is that it's a whole new design. It is sturdier and more durable. So Toniebox 1 is stitched along all of the corners, but it's still really soft and squishy. This is probably a flexible silicone of some description, and then the rest of it is PVC/cotton kind of blend. So sustainable and also really durable. So it does, I don't know what the first one was made of. Anyways, I'm getting into the weeds of things that probably don't matter very much. All you need to know is that there is quite a lot of robustness and protection around kind of the important parts. The Tony 2 is actually, it feels heavier than the Toniebox 1. If I can find some stats on the weight of both of them, I will put them on the screen. That's not the only thing that's changed. The other thing that's changed is the top. As you might notice with this top, if you can see it, I'll put it up really close and see if you can see it. This has got a bunch of scuffs on it, and that's because the Tonies are hand painted. So when you move it and throw it around, it kind of scuffs up the white. With this Toniebox, I don't know what this is made of, but this feels like it's not going to mark as easily, and it's going to be a lot easier to clean. You'll also notice that they have different top pieces, right? This is the light on this one. Let me see if I can light it up for you. Is it going to show the light? Oh, it's so It's so bright in here, I don't know if you'll be able to see it. But there you go, it's flashing blue now. This one is like rainbow fun colored, kind of like the new series. See? So they have different top plates as well. The ears are the same size, very similar size, but a different material. Apparently this one is made of like a more flexible silicone. We'll see. So they do actually talk about the fact that this can be dropped, thrown, tumbled, whatever, far more than the original Toniebox. However, it still appears to be that the ears are going to be a weak point. So let me just caveat everything I'm saying here. So basically what I did for 10 years is, or not for 10 years, but for a lot of my doctorate, I worked on a team of engineers where we were actually designing robots for babies, and not just like simplistic robots, like robots with moving arms. One of the things that we did was we tried to design a robot that could high five little kids. And I worked with a bunch of different robots, both robots that had been built like a decade before, but also building our own robots to design what we thought would work best to kind of survive babies and little kids. In my research, when I do like the design of toys, just to like test like a quick question with babies, I design those toys to be able to survive like the 60 seconds that I need the baby to do the thing without it breaking. And it sounds like that's not very hard, but it is. It's tremendously, tremendously hard to design something that babies won't break almost instantaneously. So when we think about something like this, which is very expensive and is marketed to last a long time, the durability really needs to be up there, and it's no easy feat of engineering to do that. I do think that the Toniebox is one of the better on the market that is more durable. However, I still have the same concern with the Toniebox 2 that I had with the Toniebox 1, and that's that these ears are the weak point because they stick out from the design. So if they fall on it, they are far more likely to break. Now, I don't know if Tonies has replacement ears or if it's even possible to replace them with the new design. I don't know, but I do fear that these are going to be the first things that break, and they are far more likely to break if a little kid or a kid with a different type of brain has a Toniebox. However, that is probably the only weak point that I can see, because the Toniebox is actually super accessible and I can see how it would work with 12-month-olds. I can actually see how younger children could use it too. The original Tonies, this design of like hand-painted, hard, and they're kind of heavy little figurines, right? If you give this to a baby and they peg it at you, it's really gonna hurt, like really, really, really gonna hurt. However, they did release, when they released the Toniebox 2, they also released something called My First Tonies. Let me grab you the box. So they released My First Tonies, and they didn't just release a farm set, they have so many different ones. Now, when they released the My First Tonies, they did two things. They redesigned the Tony for little people, and they also redesigned the content for little people. Now, Tonies have always been pretty good at pitching the right age content and having like the age ranges on the packet. Like, let me see, is it on? Yeah, so the book ones have like up here, it'll say 6+. And they're very good at like estimating the general age that children will enjoy these things. So the content has never really been the question. It's always been the design of the Tonies. So with these Tonies, what they've actually done is they've created them out of this, like, I think it's soft, flexible silicone. Let me check my notes. My First Tonies. So they're made of silicone and special silicone glue. They're BPA free and toy safety certified. So this means that they're safe for mouthing and chewing, but they're not sold as dedicated teething toys. So just keep that in mind, because as much as they are like silicone here, they still have like a seam there. And what that seam is that they've got like the little silicone body, and then inside of here, they've got the little like magnetic chip that that attaches to the Toniebox. It attaches to the Toniebox as a magnet, but also it reads, oh, it doesn't actually stick to it. There you go. It's not as good at sticking to the Toniebox, I guess. But essentially this is a little magnet in here, so we don't want them chewing on it non-stop, and you want to keep checking for like rips and tears in it, because as much as that silicone glue is adhesing this like chip and magnet onto the actual silicone body, it's still something that you need to be mindful of. So you just need to check it for wear and tear, I think. It's pretty forgiving. Like, you can put it anywhere you like. It will fall off occasionally, but it can also adhere quite well. When they released the Toniebox 2, they also released these little My First Tonies. However, the My First Tonies are backwards compatible. I actually really like the farm ones because it's like realistic animal sounds. What kind of animal are you? So it's still just as like, hello, piggy. Just as like magnetic. How do you do? That's your My First Tonies. Again, you'll see on the horse, it's got this like little seam and there's silicone glue in there to keep the magnet onto the body. There's a cow too. They're more baby friendly. I think you'll probably get a few years out of it, but like less use as kids get older. Now, the one thing that I immediately thought of when I saw this was this. So we bought this out of my own money, mind you, a couple of years ago. It's the Nightlight Tony. Let me see if I can actually turn it on or if it's flat. It's flat. So it's actually a Nightlight Tony, but it's also just like, you know, sleep time music. And so when I saw these and felt these, they reminded me of this design. These are less like squishy, but similar concept, I guess. The other thing to note with these like My First Tonies as well, and probably the Toniebox too, is that they look to be a lot easier to clean. So if you have a baby who has mouthed or vomited or any number of things on them, they're a lot easier to clean. There's a lot less like nooks and crannies to like kind of get in to clean, whereas like the Toniebox 2, there is like a wider space around the ears. There's the little ox here where you put the headphones in, and there's just like this whole thing is like easier to kind of mess with, and then you've got that port there too. The Toniebox 2 actually charges in a completely different way. It charges via like a USB-C, and as you'll notice, there is no headphone jack, and that's because one, they only accept, I guess, USB-C headphones, and two, I think they will roll out Bluetooth headphone functionality in the near future, but I don't know when, which is kind of a bummer because we use it with headphones all the time. So that's a problem for us, but we've got an original Toniebox for now, so it doesn't really matter. Back to what I was saying about babies being able to use this from quite a young age. This is a really adaptable and accessible design, right? Just to turn it on, you just click the button and it turns on, and it will automatically turn itself off too. One thing I love about the Toniebox that I don't love about some of the other devices on the market is that when it turns off, or it will turn itself off and it won't waste its battery, so that even if you go a couple of weeks or longer without using it, it will, if you click the ears, turn on and still have battery in it. And that's kind of what makes my family, I guess, prefer this, because every time we went to use some of the other devices, we'd go to use it and it'd be flat, and then we'd have to charge it again, and it didn't work. And it wasn't as accessible. I know that even a like 6-month-old baby can probably learn to squeeze the ear to turn it on, and having that cue of the light that immediately pops up when they do that is going to be that cause and effect relationship that we expect babies to be able to use and understand. Now, that cause and effect relationship is kind of operating throughout all of the different things. When a baby puts the device on, it almost immediately starts playing, and that's really important for establishing cause and effect. The more latency or lag between when a baby does something and when a reaction happens, the less likely it is that a baby is going to be reinforced in doing that behavior again. Basically, we want cause and effect. We want cause and effect. The littler the baby, the quicker that needs to be, and the more practice they're going to need using it. Now, it's not like there's a little tiny card slot that kids have to get their like card into, or babies. They can actually put it over there. They can put it over there, or they can just kind of drop it on and it actually will magnetize more often than not. It's really accessible for teeny tiny hands to be able to operate this device. And as long as you actually download the content first, let's see if this one needs downloading.
Give it a moment to download, then we can start right away.
They need downloading first and they take a little while. What you want to do as a parent is, oh, it looks like it's loading. Oh, sorry. There you go. So it showed you how long it was going to take to download. But as a parent, what you want to do before you give this device to a baby is you want to make sure that the content is downloaded for the first time on the device ahead of time before you give it to the baby, because you want the baby's first experience or the early experiences to be really successful and really easy to use. And you may want to, as a parent, demonstrate how to make it work. That's really like, you guys already do this as parents with babies. You teach them how to do things. It's all about modeling and imitation. All we need to do is model a couple of times that cause and effect relationship, then give our babies the opportunity to do it. And honestly, I think that this is one of the toys that is most accessible and most successful at getting babies to understand how to use it. Do you need, for your 1-year-old plus, the Toniebox 2? If you already have the Toniebox 1, no. I don't think so. I don't know about safety rating of the Toniebox 1, but my first thoughts are that there's nothing inherently dangerous about the Toniebox 1. And it's backwards compatible. The Tonies are probably the part that is primarily important when it comes to babies using this. And these can be purchased and used on any Toniebox. Do I think that if you don't have a Toniebox, you should go for the Toniebox 2? I think that depends. I think this one is going to have greater longevity and it's going to have more functionality and just more features in general to grow with your child, because it will hopefully have Bluetooth headphones, because it has games and things like that that the Toniebox 1 doesn't have. So I think that if you have a choice, Toniebox 2 is probably just an easier pick. But if it is a financial constraint and this one ends up being, I don't know, discounted, I think it's also fine as well. That, in a nutshell, is the Toniebox 2 vs 1 review for age 1 plus. There is a lot more that came out with the Toniebox 2 and the newer releases around the same time, like the games, which I haven't even got here. I'm going to have to go find them, but also the book Tonies and things like that. So let me know if you want that as a wrap up as well, and maybe some of the science and evidence and robustness and longevity kind of evaluations there too. And we can do that next.